So, you know, the thing I keep coming back to with high masking autistic or ADHD burnout, it shows up like it came out of like thin air, out of nowhere. One week, we're just managing everything more or less pretty all right. And then all of a sudden, we're in like full burnout and we can't work out like what changed, what happened, what just happened. Because on paper, or if you go back and you're looking at all the details, trying to figure that thing out, nothing really did happen. It was all pretty much the same old, same old. We didn't notice something. Now, for a lot of us, that burnout had been actually building up for weeks or maybe months or maybe even longer. And we couldn't feel it. We couldn't actually sense anything building up at all. And the thing is, there's supposed to be some kind of warning in general before burnout. You're like your energy's running low or something, but you aren't getting that signal that other people get, that they can read before they go past right into burnout, past that point of no return. But the point actually of it's much harder and longer to eventually return. We do get back. We can get back. I hope always. So you are going right past that particular point and without getting those signals that you could ease off some things or maybe drop a few things to avoid burnout or make some changes. So you only really notice the overwhelm, the burnout after you've already gotten there. So masking, the kind that's specific to our neurodivergent brains, our neurodivergent lives, it's essentially some kind of like performance, neuro-normative performance that we run so constantly day to day that we might even forget that it is technically some kind of performance. It's running automatically. It's running in our background processes in almost all of the parts of our lives. Now, for high masking autistic people, that can mean things like managing our face and our eyes. So they do the neuro-normative expected things at the expected times. It's like keeping our vocal volume and our tone in some kind of range and format. So other people, they read it as so-called normal. And a lot of these things, I'm doing air quotes. I'm doing air quotes for normal here, if you're listening. And this is so we don't seem something like intimidating or different. Maybe you're running like a quick check on most of your responses before they leave your mouth. This is that tone and the vocal prosody, the cadence and everything, and the words. Or you might, speaking of those words, script everything in advance. Perhaps you are even holding your body still when it really wants to move or get up or pace or stim in an environment that is not welcoming to those things. Some of us even copy the gestures. I gesture a lot in the videos if you're watching. It might be copying the timing of a voice. It might even be kind of matching speech rhythms, which is cadence of the people around us. And we might be doing these things so closely that we can't always tell where that copying or that mimicking ends and where we begin. Which, side note, is it actually made me pretty good at a lot of improv exercises that do exactly that. But anyways, this stuff, it can sometimes work, at least for that thing of like fitting in without getting noticed, sort of. That's sort of the trap, though. It's a trap. It works well enough that the people around you might have no idea how much being that way, existing that way, actually costs us to do. And it also might work well enough that you can lose track of that cost, that energy cost yourself. Now, most of us have probably told someone we've known for a little while. Perhaps we trust them a little bit more. It's a little bit safer about, say, autism. And then you hear this phrase. I know a lot of you are going to know what I'm about to say. Well, you don't look autistic. Now that is pretty offensive. Many of us don't like that response because of such thing. It is offensive. It's hella common though. And there's a bunch of reasons somebody might say that. A lot of them are based in stigma or myths or much worse than that. But high masking is often one of those reasons. But a lot of the time, we mask for safety. Safety. It keeps us out of trouble in all kinds of environments, from our workplaces to, well, just pretty much the rest of society, because it's all built around these neuro-normative ways. Now we're holding up whatever norms are around us, and we're doing that so we don't stick out in a way that gets us in trouble. And this can be something as serious as like law enforcement, depending on what you look like, where you are. It could be something like our bosses at our workplaces so we don't get fired. Sometimes it's to make life a bit easier. It might be at home with family, and there could be varying degrees of necessity, of course, depending on culture and upbringing and the era you were born in and so on. And you might be doing this so you don't get kicked out of a living arrangement. It's a lot of work. And doing this, if you're doing this for the most of your waking hours, as many people do, it's exhausting. And if you've actually tried acting, the interesting part of this is some of us who do acting or performing find that the opposite is true of actually acting. It's easier and it's less exhausting because we can be more of ourselves up there. But the why behind all of that and everything, that's a different video. So here's where my own brain wiring comes in and how it leads towards burnout. Now, I have low interoception, and interoception is the sense you have that is reading what's going on inside your body. I don't have much of that. Now, this thing covers everything from hunger to thirst and tiredness to the more emotional stuff, like being able to tell what is a sensation of stress or of happiness or of joy, being able to differentiate between those, and depression, like, the heavy feeling of that. Now, the whole thing, like sensations, those are pretty faint for me or non-existent, or the thing has to be really big before I notice. Like I can go most of a day sometimes without registering that I'm hungry when I'm hungry until I'm absolutely starving or hangry or whatever. And stress can sort of work the same way. My body can be like well into an extremely stressful situation until that part of me that's supposed to register that, to notice it, actually notices anything at all. And even then, I might have a very tough time knowing which emotion to attach to whatever the sensation is that comes up. It can be pretty complex for some of us. Now, what I do know is that things usually have to get pretty intense before they're registering there. And then when they do, they're usually registering as something really big and often very negative. And this goes well beyond just me or my interpretation or whatnot. This is a researched thing. It's in scientific literature. And it's also something that a lot of neurodivergent people experience. It's quite common. Now, research on autistic people finds that this kind of the separation where the body can be running a full stress response to whatever's going on while your conscious head just sort of stays like not really noticing that thing. Doesn't register much, even though the stress is there technically in your body. Like, I'll give an example of this. Now, just last night, I had it was a crisis, pretty much, somebody else's crisis, and I had to help. And my normal reaction is to go into a very focused, like logical, rational mode to help suss out what needs to happen and do that thing. It's happened many times to me before. It happened last night. But at one point, suddenly, during that time, I had a very common, sudden, and very strong stress reaction in my body right out of the flight category. Like there's freeze, flight, fright, like that sort of thing. Flight. And it came pretty late. Now, I've read and certified in so many trauma and nervous system systems, models, and so on, so I can recognize that now. Like I know what that thing is, and I checked in, like just checking in. What do I notice? Like, was there any preamble to that? Was there any sensations before? Are there any other bodily sensations now? And there was nothing else. There's nothing leading up to it. It was just sudden in there. Even though it was logical, rational, it didn't make sense to like how I noticed my brain and everything prior to that. The only other thing I noticed, and I found this interesting, so I'll mention it, is I have like songs that I play on single song loop over and over again that are enjoyable to me. They're nice, they're pleasant, they help me out, they get me in a good mood, something positive, right? That song was playing at a very high volume inside my head, much higher than normal. So I think my brain was maybe giving me something that I needed in that moment. So my body, my body mind thing was giving me something from my brain, at least for part of it. But you won't hear about that kind of thing in any of these classes or literature that I've come across or been in myself. It's usually this other things that come up. Nothing like that. But even with that common body reaction, the one I had in the flight category, it happened late. It happened without anything before. It came out of nowhere. It didn't seem to make sense with my logical, rational, organized essence in that moment. So I wasn't getting signals that are typical. And again, this is something that's happened many times to me. It's very consistent in my life. This isn't abnormal for me. And to be pretty blunt, in those crisis situations, in my very personal individual experience and opinion, only speaking for me, it's actually quite useful, right? My regular days are quite often chaos up in my noggin. I'm not like that on a regular day. This is, as soon as a crisis happens, this is an immediate switch in my brain. The chaos disappears. So that is helpful for me to be helpful to someone else in that crisis. Anyways, and there is science behind this one too. I have looked it up. It's not just me. Anyways, I'll put the studies in the description so you can look at them yourself and draw your own conclusions, or you can talk them over with someone else. But something like half of autistic brains and about 40% of ADHD ones, maybe a higher chunk of AuDHD brains, both autistic and ADHD. There are some hypotheses out there that think it's additive. They take in emotion and body sensation differently than the standard model assumes. And so often it seems to be an assumption. So there are a lot of us like this, or variations of this kind of thing. We are not alone. So this could be part of what's going on when you mask, when you socially mask out there, and then find yourself suddenly in burnout going, hey, what the actual F happened? Just like my flight response. Where did that come from? It doesn't seem to be fitting my general experience here. So you're running a very heavy performance with the masking all day, every day, for a very long time. And you've got a bunch of other things going on alongside the masking, your work or the conversations or whatever. And you might have a body like mine that doesn't do that signaling thing so much. Other people seem to have this thing, some inner sensation or some little flag that lets them know early, like, hey, buddy pal, this is getting pretty intense. We might want to dial it back. We might want to drop a few things that we're doing. Now, for a lot of us, that same flag, that buddy pal flag, if it comes in at all, it's either tiny, it's easy to miss, or it might not be there at all, or it might arrive pretty late. Now, most of what I've seen about burnout assumes that there is that gradual, hey, buddy pal, signal going on, that your energy is running low and you need to recharge, reset, that sort of thing. Now, for a lot of high masking autistic people and ADHD people, maybe up to half of us, that signal is pretty faint. Like I said, it's easy to miss. It's a tiny, tiny little flag. So the whole thing kind of might seem more like you're managing just fine right up until that boom crash. And then there's maybe if you're lucky, a very short window in between where anything is actually catchable. Or like in my case that I described, there wasn't really one at all. So you've probably heard the standard advice, the oh so common thing that we hear out there from people who might be good meaning. They could have good intentions, but they haven't experienced this. They haven't done it themselves. So they say something like, just unmask. Just be yourself. This is a safe place to be that. Until it's not. Anyways, this is a very privileged thing, really. You're asked to drop the performance, really, and just let yourself be. And I understand this. I understand why people say it, because masking is expensive. It's costly on our bodies and our minds. And unmasking, it sounds like the fix. It just gets rid of that stuff. And everybody wants everybody to be authentic. Authenticity. Until it's dangerous. Until they are like, not like that. So, anyways, they say just do it. It's easy. Just do it. Somehow. I'm not going to give you the how. They say just be yourself. It should be easy. Now, there are a bunch of problems with this just unmask suggestion, as you probably have caught my drift, because I don't think I made it that subtle. First of all, unmasking assumes that you even understand how or where you're masking in the first place. Now, for a lot of us, the mask has been running so long that it actually shapes how we do almost everything. It becomes like some sort of muscle memory almost. It's like worked in there, like an automated response, like you're going on autopilot almost with this thing based on it's basically I'm going to bring up an analogy. It may or may not work, but I've done a lot of dog training. It could have been like being aversively dog trained since you were a kid. Now, this example, again, I'm not saying we're like dogs being trained, but aversives. It's about the aversives. Like when you train a dog unethically with something like a shock collar or whatever, you're basically teaching them a way to react to the world around them, right? Because they're trying to avoid something negative. I mean, they're forcing the negative on the dog. It's kind of like neuro-normative society forcing this negative thing on us. And it's all opposed to like working with them in a positive reinforcement way. It's not a perfect analogy by any means, but the bit about it being negative reinforcement affecting behavior. This is like the avoidance of an unpleasant stimulus. That's what that kind of training does in an unnatural way, really. Let's move on. You can't drop something you can't even find. And after decades of doing this thing, perhaps, for a very long time, finding the mask is a whole bunch of the work, most of the work, half the work at least, because it's such an automated response to these environments, these negative environments that are expecting it, right? They're so pervasive. It's everywhere we go, even our homes in most cases, most of us to some degree. It becomes difficult to notice because we're just always doing it in every environment we're in. Now, it also assumes the just unmask thing, that not great advice. Unmasking is good. It's just this advice is obvious. It's not good advice in a lot of cases. Now, in the moment, it's really hard to tell how much unmasking is okay and acceptable in this environment and how much is too much for here. And then you still got to do all that brain work while you're at it, which is still really exhausting. It's hard to know how to just kind of ease off something that you're doing to some degree and by how far and how much and in what way. It all comes back to working out which parts of you are even the mask. And working out what's really you after masking since you were a little kid is really difficult. There's also studies out there on that too, about how young we are when we start masking. And I think it's something like age 8. I'll put a link in the description. So it gets even harder when your interoception runs low. So this adds another thing on top of it. And this is true for at least half of us autistic, 40% of ADHD brains, more for AuDHD, what I was saying earlier. So this internal signal of ours, it's that faint, that little tiny hey buddy flag, if any flag at all. It's tough to read. So it's hard to tell when it's draining your energy in the first place. It's hard to know that. And even with low interoception, the masking still drains you, even if you can't feel it, right? So you can't feel what's manageable, what's a manageable amount of masking, or what's no masking, and when does the harm start, or what's even harmful. So this just unmask, doing air quotes, it's giving you a goal. It's giving you or a task to do without any way to tell if you're doing that. So you might logically know, I do want to unmask. It's a good thing. It's going to help my body. It's going to reduce my stress. But you still might not have any read on what's actually happening in that moment on top of everything else that's going on. It's a process. It's a lot of work to get there, is what I'm trying to say. There's no just involved. And this advice, also, an important note, can be dangerous for some people as well. So it's really important to understand that and know that. So for some neurodivergent humans, unmasking in the wrong location, it can carry a real risk. And that risk it's not even between all of us. Code switching already stacks on top of masking for a lot of racialized people. And getting interpreted or read as too much, air quotes, it can cost those people in ways that it doesn't cost a lot of the rest of us. This same thing goes for trans people or anyone in a job or a home where like standing out or being different in certain ways has real consequences. So a big part of this is like understanding and choosing which scenarios are perhaps safer to unmask in, and find the people and the places where being yourself or more of yourself and communicating the ways that we were wired to do is safe enough. And we need to stay honest with ourselves about which spaces that we're choosing to keep masking in for now and why we're doing that, oftentimes for safety. Because you might have those very important reasons to do so, and that's very valid and very fair. And other people, neurodivergent or not, who have the privilege to take these risks towards normalizing unmasking in neuro-normative spaces, well, we can opt to take some of this work on with the acknowledgement that it's less safe for others to do so. So it's worth working out where it's actually safer to unmask and even trying to find other outlets where you can. So scope out those safer spaces if you have them in your area, if they exist and you have access to them. So what do we do? What do we do when our body isn't giving us much of a signal to go by while you're doing this work of unmasking, this process? You build the noticing sort of muscle, that muscle memory. You can actually pick something up. You can actually get some kind of signal, some kind of information, which is oftentimes from outside our bodies. So this is where my improv background can come in. It can be a little bit handy for this because improv trains a specific move that turns out to be somewhat useful here, and that is curiosity. We're prioritizing curiosity over being self-conscious. So curiosity is something that we use all the time in improv. It makes us be good improvisers, basically. So quick side note, performance spaces like improv or similar outlets are often safer places to unmask and just be yourself. It can give you a lot of practice in that. It's why when I found performance, it first grabbed my introverted autistic butt and it never let go as a dance fitness teacher to begin with. And then I became a community theater nerd on top of that. And then I became an improviser. So I didn't even realize that I was completely unmasked and safe in that environment up on stage as a fitness instructor. And so somebody came up to me about that teaching and they said, "Hey, you're actually playing a character up there. And I blurted out, no, I'm actually totally myself up there. And it surprised me. It just came out. And then I had to do a lot of self-reflection about why that was true. Is that true? Is that really me? And it was. It was actually more me up on stage than I was before the class started. I've noticed this similarity of sorts between being really in my head in an improv scene and being really in my head about some social situation I'm at in real life outside the scene. At least this is when I think I'm socially masking. Now, for me, this is some sort of situation where I don't know what's happening usually, or I'm trying to integrate into some kind of group conversation. That's very difficult for me. Or initiate something, speaking to another person, or just really how to exist as an autistic person. If you're autistic or ADHD, you might have your own version of this kind of state, being really in your head socially. So you don't necessarily have to have a particular feeling or sensation that you know about. It's often that you're just really in your head. That's something I could often at least I knew that this something was going on socially. Now, when you're on stage and stuck in your own head, this is something you also usually don't want on stage in improv, just like in these social situations. And in both situations, you're like monitoring how you look and whether you're doing it right, or what should I say? Right? So this is the same thing in both of these situations. So one way out in improv is to put your attention on your scene partner or the space around you. You have options. And just get genuinely curious about that thing. Like, what is your scene partner actually doing right now in this moment? Or what color is the wall behind them, if this is easier for you? So the moment that your attention goes to something external and very specific, it will sort of deactivate that self-monitoring to a certain extent, if even for a moment. So you can kind of grab onto that. So you can borrow that move off the stage in real life, in your own life, for this whole unmasking thing. If you're somewhere and you want to try it out, at least. It's really simple to try this one out without other people knowing, or, having them notice that something's off. In these moments, you might want to pick one real thing outside your body and just get really curious about one single detail of it. So it can be anything. It doesn't have to be those things that I mentioned. For example, you might even just notice the temperature of a mug in your hand. Like you could use the sound in the room if auditory things are easier for you. The texture of whatever your hand is resting on. Sometimes I'll intentionally notice like the vocal prosody of a voice. The point is you're putting your attention on something external and specific and just letting it stay there for just a moment, and it gets you out of your head. So that means you don't have to check in with your body to do something, to see how you are. You can check in with these external things and it can just give you a beat. And this thing helps me get out of my head in improv, and it might just for a moment help you build up that muscle memory of getting out of your head when you're in those social moments. And it might also help you notice if you're masking. It might help get you some clues about that sort of thing, which is what a lot of this work is all about. And some people find that when they start doing this work of interoception, that's checking in with things externally, it can actually eventually help them start noticing the sensations in their body. So if you do have low interoception, this work could also help affect that a little bit in some cases. It hasn't worked for me yet, but I have heard of it working for other people. And as for when you actually use this thing, now you don't need to announce that you're masking. You don't need to announce that you're doing this improv activity. You don't even need to mention it to yourself once it becomes muscle memory. You don't have to. What this gives you is a way to practice noticing things. That's skipping your body. So on the days, or if it's always that your interoception is just handing you nothing. Like, it's not telling you you're overwhelmed in this group environment. It's not telling you if you're heading towards burnout or something like that. You have this tool to check on something external and get you out of your head. And you don't need to save this for any kind of crisis, like I was mentioning earlier, or some big moment. It works really well, works best even on small things that you can do. You can practice it just several times a day and start building it into your muscle memory. So that separation thing that I mentioned earlier, the body and the awareness of things being kind of separate in people like us, that is in the literature that I have links in the description. Now, I wanted to mention one other part that isn't in the literature. This is just my sort of working theory, just an idea that I have. Hasn't been proven to my knowledge. I haven't really seen it discussed, but my theory is that for people like us, that this noticing whatever we receive is kind of enough. You don't have to interpret whatever you do notice. You don't have to turn it into a feeling or a sensation, giving it a name or a label. You don't need to do that if labeling doesn't serve you. And you don't have to say that label to anyone else either if you don't have one. Like, what you are noticing, whatever it might be, is fine. It's a neutral or a general idea of how you are, even if it's just okay, is fine. The act of putting your attention on something, whatever it is, that's something tangible. That's something you can access and notice on purpose. And that you probably have, like at least I have, a system for that. I know how I am even without the labels. I have a lot of experience in that. I know what I want more of and I know what I want less of. And it has been proven, this part is in the literature, that continuing to check in and check in and check in and not notice things is stressful and dysregulating in and of itself, which is kind of against the point of a lot of this kind of work. So that is a hypothesis. I'm thinking about it. I'm sort of working around and figuring that idea out for myself at least, and I could be wrong about it. So just take it as a current in progress theory and see if it does anything for you, and throw it away if you don't like it. And this is the thing that I kind of want to just, I guess, put one of those hey buddy flags down, but a bigger one for where this show is going. Masking is a form of scripted and often sort of baked in performance within a neuronormative world. It's not very healthy either. The thing that I keep coming back to, though, is learning how to be present without the script in safer and easier ways, because we don't want to be masking. And that's the exact thing, really, that improv is very good at helping you work on. And I'm building on that idea in the episodes ahead for this show. This episode was just the first and very easy entry point into this general idea. And this is, what show is it? This is Wired Divergent, and I'm Jen deHaan. So if you want to work on this confidence and the social side of this, I'm running workshops called Off Script. They're improv-based workshops that are built for that, for going off script, for helping you unmask and other things. They're all levels, including no improv experience at all. And if you want one-on-one support, direct support, I also offer coaching as well. So both are over at my site, jendehaan.com. You'll also find a newsletter over there, plus written versions of these episodes and some other bits and pieces of stuff. And if you are listening on the podcast, hello. And if you're watching on the video, hello. Just know that there's both versions. They're both out there, so you can go with whatever one you prefer at any time. All right, bye for now.